Okay, according to my notes for the Budget Committee workshop, this was scheduled at 5:30 a.m. So, but I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting, the Budget Committee meeting to order, and ask Angela to please call the roll. Here.
Lewis. Anna.
Here.
Moon. Mitchell.
Here.
Moon.
Here.
Bueller.
Okay, this meeting is, what we're hoping to do here is get some updates and get our first chance to look at the total breakdown in the budget that's being presented. But most of everything and most of the discussion that we're going to be dealing with tonight will be coming from the Finance Director, Randy Vineyard. And at this time, I'd like to go ahead and, Randy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Just some things I'll mention up front, and then we can point them out when Angela puts the spreadsheets on the board. Just to update you on a number of things. First off, we have modified all the office holders' salaries to reflect the 2010 census category and not the current census. There was an issue brought up at a public meeting. We've gone back and double checked those, and those have all been reduced to reflect the appropriate census information. Secondly, we've said this, but now, as the mayor pointed out, this is your first real look at the budget in total and not in pieces as it was presented to you in the two all-day long workshops. A reminder that the primary increase in the budget this year will be the implementation of a one-step increase in our classification compensation plan for all of our employees. And that's roughly 1.84%. And then the associated benefit increases that go with that. The second thing that we've done in the budget is we felt strongly that we need to comply with all of our intergovernmental agreements. We have a number of those with with the city of Maryville and the city of Alcoa that the county has not fully participated as it was supposed to by those agreements. Based on the county's fiscal situation a few years ago when we had significant cuts. The budget that we would request that you strongly consider next month when it comes up is that we restore those funding levels to what the county's commitment was. Those interlocal agreements have been approved by the county commission. Those are not administrative matters. So those would be for Parks and Rec, the 911 Center, GIS, and then we have an agreement with the state for the Tennessee Rehab Services. That's just a minor increase. All these are fairly small in the $40-some-odd thousand range in total. So we'll show those to you in a minute. And then the third item is Friday, the state approved the hall income tax. So we now have clear direction on that. We will be reducing our revenue estimate by 16.6% based on what the legislature approved on Friday. And we'll show that to you here shortly. Based on my conversations with each of you individually, there's a desire, I think, to consider strongly the recovery court staffing request. That scratches a couple of itches that we have, which ultimately addresses our jail housing issue. And then the second thing that you heard during the hearings was from, I think Joe Huff presented it, the county has a serious need to replace the floor in the Everett Center. It's the original floor.
I think we were looking at the bleachers.
Well,
And
we had
both of
we
them,
said both.
he felt like the bleachers were a safety issue.
Those are safety, but then the floor also,
Yes.
and since both need to be done, they wanted to do an assessment, come back, and they believe we're a strong candidate to get a grant to fund that. So depending on what funding source they might be able to pursue, it may be one or the other. So that won't require any budget approval or anything. That would be us pursuing a grant. Then if we get awarded the grant, we'd bring that back to the budget committee and then on the full commission if we receive that grant. So those are the kind of programmatic updates and budget updates that have transpired since the 2 hearings that we had earlier this month. On the revenue front, Angela's got that pulled up for you to look at. If you look at the total revenues right now are $48,436,320. So $48.4 million. And we've got funding requests, appropriation requests of about $49.4. So it's a little less than $1 million difference. We've predicated our largest revenue source, which is property tax. The 101, please.
Is your also
No.
my presentation's blank?
All right, well, on the first page, it says 1 of 34 at the top of the page. So for account 40110, current property tax, this is the piece of property tax that is attributable to the 88 cents of the tax rate. So the 88 cents out of the $2.47 property tax rate, that's what we would expect to collect next year at our current collection assumptions. We base our budget on 95% collection. And we still have some appeals out that won't be heard and adjudicated administratively until June. And then we'll have the final information from the state on their public utilities, most likely in August. So right now, we would expect at the current tax rate, at the current division of the tax rate among general county, schools, debt service, and capital for schools, education capital, the 88 cents would equate to roughly $28.8 million for next year. And that's 88 cents times $327,500 per penny is how we arrived at that number. And I wanted to highlight that one because that's the largest one in the general county. It's our largest single source of revenue. The other thing I want to point out, if you'll drop down to line 40163, that's payment with taxes. When we have a company that we recruit, we abate taxes as part of that recruitment. We put them under a payment in lieu of tax, where we're not receiving property tax, we're receiving a payment in lieu of property tax. We had one of those that rolled off this year, so that's why you see less payment in lieu of tax, but you'll see it on the property tax roll, so it's included in that $28.8 million. And another one that's worth highlighting, let's see. Most all of the fees we got updated from, we get most of the source of our revenues from the fee offices and then what we think we're going to collect from the state on the, what I call the shared taxes. On 41140, the cable TV franchise, There's been some discussion about we would not receive that revenue this year. I spoke with the attorney for our local cable authority. He told me that he has confirmed with both of our primary cable operators in this marketplace that they fully expect to continue to pay the cable authority. The cable authority then pays us. Evidently, before I got here, there was some legislation that was passed that they would phase that out, and if you had a local cable franchise and you were paying local governments directly, then that would go to the state, and the state then would pay the local community. But since ours goes to our cable authority and not us directly, from what he told me, the cable franchisors, cable companies, do not consider that to apply, and they will continue doing what they've been doing. So I say all that to say this: we don't have to worry about the state taking a haircut off of that. Anything the state that goes through the state charges an administrative fee, whether it's sales tax or anything else. And that's what I refer to as a haircut. So I want to make sure for those, and I've had discussion with 2 or 3 commissioners that asked me about that one, and that's what I've been informed at this point. I did ask the attorney if he could get me something in writing, and I've not gotten that yet. Basically, all the revenues are pretty status quo. There's not, in the general county, obviously there was an increase in the sales tax rate, but as you all know, the sales tax does not benefit the general county. It goes to highways, schools, and the debt service fund. And we'll get into that in just a moment. So, now, the other large variance that you'll see is on page 3 of 34. And you'll see the first one is account 46915, that's contracted prisoner board. That is the reimbursement we receive from the state. And then you'll see the 4 other direct federal revenue, 47990. That is the reimbursement we receive on federal inmates. And unless I'm reading something that other people don't read, for budget purposes, financial purposes, the only variable inmates we have, variable meaning any discretion over, are federal inmates. We do not have discretion over state inmates. The committee meetings I've sat in, the conversations I've had with the sheriff's department, I mean, it's pretty clear. Unless there's a bed, we can't move the state prisoner. Am I misspeaking? So there has to be a state bed somewhere else to take one of our state prisoners. I heard Mr. Bass at one of our committee meetings say pretty clearly that supposedly this relief that we were expecting in the state system would be in another jail they were opening up, whether it's Trousdale County or somewhere else. They're already out. Their supply exceeds the bed capacity. So what we have here is information from the Sheriff's Department on their best estimates for what they would expect us to receive on reimbursements. I think on 46915 we could increase that. We're probably okay on the federal.
If we took the federal prisoners out, we would forego $2,200,000.
Yes, if you take any amount of money out of either of those 2 lines, you have to replace it somewhere else with a property tax increase or something else, or you have to cut expenses that much, or a combination of the 2. Those are your only options.
Randy, is now the time to ask the question if you have one, or shall that come later?
Sure.
Excuse me, on the contracted prisoner board, 46915, the adopted budget that we're currently operating in says that we're actually at $1.9 million.
Mhm.
We're projecting 650,000 next year. I don't understand.
Well, that's their estimate that they provided us. I think that, I think we can raise that number myself, but that's me. We're obligated to give you the information that
Got
we're
it.
providing.
Got it.
The reason why we showed a reduction, again, is to, if they were to take 100 state inmates by opening up another facility, then there's going to be a reduction of that revenue. So that's why we're showing a reduction of revenue, because we don't know how many we will have for the next year.
And the sheriff's department actually made the same request last year.
Okay.
I don't know the exact number, but
Right.
it was.
It's just a matter, it's kind of fluid, and as we did this year, we modified it as we went along this year, amending the revenues to kind of meet what's actually really coming in.
I've had my struggles with helping commissioners understand who've asked me, why don't we just cut them out? And my response has always been, if you do that, you have to cut the other side of the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cut revenue out, you've got to cut expenses, because we have to present a balanced budget. That's not an option.
Well, you know, we're just here for information today, but you know, for me, it's cleaner a different way.
But I want to make sure everybody understands, there is two sides to this equation. If you eliminate revenue, you have to generate it somewhere else or cut expenses,
Exactly.
or a combination of the two. Just so, there are a couple of you that are relatively new to the Budget Committee, line 47715, tax credit bond rebate. That is the money that we receive back from the Treasury Department, the United States Treasury Department. The county built a school with, I forget what the acronym is. Yeah, QSCAD, Qualified School Construction Bonds. The federal government was trying to help the country get out of a malaise and encouraging infrastructure investments and school investments in particular. And Blount County and a number of counties in the state participated in that. City schools did too. And the transaction is, if the county borrowed the money, the Treasury Department would rebate you the interest. So it was basically it was an interest-free loan. Well, as we have come to find out now, it's not what they sold us, because they've gone through what they call sequestration in Washington. So we no longer get the $712,000 or $722,000 in interest that we got rebated back to us. They've now cut that twice because of the federal government's budget cuts, which I don't know what those are, but they give us a nice letter telling us that they're reducing what they send us. So that now is $668,000 for next year, and it has been in the 720 range. I forget the exact number, so I just want to make you all aware of that. So right now, our estimates for revenue for the general county, our primary operating fund, are $48,436,320. All right. On Fund 112, this is the courthouse jail maintenance fund. A number of the improvements that you're seeing here and some of the stuff we've done at the jail, some of which you can't see because it's in the ground, that we've spent money on. This is money that we receive from the court system that's collected as costs that go specifically to maintain courthouse and jails. So for next year, we're estimating about almost $191,000. Our law library, That's a statutory requirement. They collect money through a litigation tax, and that's roughly its status quo. It's about $9,400. I'm rounding numbers. Fund 115, the public library. In case you didn't know, we account for the total library operation, and it is funded by Blount County, Maryville, and Alcoa. And you can see from the revenues, we expect to receive almost $819,000 of funding from the city of Maryville for next year, and about $209,000 in funding from the city of Alcoa. The balance of that is fees and our contribution. So our contribution is the transfer. That's an accounting transaction we have to do. So our contribution is $1,023,000 and change.
Mike, I just went blank.
What's that?
I mean, on the computer. Thanks for clarifying. Just what happened there. I'm just watching on here. Don't worry about it. You just went clear.
So the total library budget for next year is proposed at $2,420,488.
You want to try?
Fund 122, that's on page 13. That's the drug control fund. You can see all the different revenues there, but it's basically a very static budget, meaning there are very little fluctuations in that.
Any telephone commissions? Out of 43,370.
I assume that's for the phone system in the facilities.
Okay.
They get a commission off of that. I don't think we own those telephone systems. It's not our system here. Fund 131, that's our highway fund. A couple things I want to. These are the estimates that were turned in to us. The first one I'd draw your attention to is well, first off, the highway fund, we have to meet a maintenance of effort requirement, which in simple terms, and we'll give you an example here shortly, but in simple terms, it's a 5-year average. We cannot reduce local funding levels below that 5-year running average for the highway department. And what that means is, if the highway department is funded locally and it also receives money from the state and pass through from the feds. Feds and the state don't want you reducing your commitment to the highway department at their expense. That's in simple terms what it boils down to. So what I'm going to propose to you is, I think we're a little, I think we've underestimated our local sales tax collections. I think that number probably should be closer to 2.7 million than it is 2.457. And we'll have to increase the appropriation side to present a balanced budget, but there's no shortage of things to invest that in, and given the presentation was made during the budget hearings about the need for street paving. Gas and motor fuel tax, which is the other large funding source there, is, and state aid program, those are both very static, as you can see. The issue that the state is wrestling with is we have a tremendous need for infrastructure investment in our road systems across the state. And the funding mechanism for that is a tax per gallon of gas sold at the pump, both for the federal tax and the state tax. Those combined, I think, are 39.4 cents or something like that. Well, you're funding on a consumption basis, and yet with CAFE standards on our automobiles, those are increasing, which means you're using less gas unless you have more people driving and driving more miles. You're not generating enough revenue to keep up with the wear and tear on the road system. So that's what part of the state's, that's what the state's struggling with. What is the best way to do that? And I don't have an answer to that. But the gas tax that the state collects at the pump level, we get a portion of that back, and that's that $2.32 million that you see here. So what I'm telling you is on the $6,024,000 worth of revenue, that needs to be increased. And now we've got a new highway superintendent. I'll get a chance to sit down with him, see how best to allocate that before we present anything to you that you might consider as a final recommendation to the full commission. He and I just had a brief conversation, so he was aware of it before he came in here. All right.
Randy?
Yes, sir.
Are you going on, are we still on highway?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm jumping ahead.
Well, I was fixing to leave it. I didn't know if you had another question.
Okay. The other state revenues, we've got 103,065 in 14-15, and 700,000 in other. That's 46,990 and 48,990. What? That's $800,000. It's not showing up in this budget. What was that?
Well, we didn't count the money in 2017 that we received in previous years for our match for the bridge program. That may have been part of it.
We'll have matches this year for state aid paid and probably and bridge.
So,
Is that not here? Is that not, are we not showing that?
we put that in the capital project fund. Well, the revenue that we,
This is fund balance.
Yeah.
You don't budget fund balance.
we're going to have to cut, if we've not finished all the state aid, if we've not finished the bridge projects, we've got to get an estimate of what we'll have remaining to be spent and put that in our final recommendation before we present to
Will that
commission.
not show up as revenue though?
It'll show up as fund balance.
Fund balance?
But all these are reimbursements anyway, aren't they? Aren't the bridge programs reimbursements?
98%.
Yeah, so we have to incur the expense and then
Right.
apply.
It's
You have
2%
to
match.
do it throughout the years it happens.
Yeah.
But what are these two line items right here? Why is this 800,000 showing up in the last 2 years and not this year?
They've happened. And so,
Okay.
yeah, that's actual 14-15. So we received that revenue, so it's in there. The amended for 15-16 has happened, so it's in there. But we do amendments to commission as they happen, because we don't know what we're going to get.
The format you're looking at is the only actual number on there is the left-hand column, actual 14-15. Everything else is just the budget right now. What Angelique's saying is the 700,000 is the use of fund balance, and we will use that. That
Yes, that's got it.
okay. Next fund is 141. This is the school's primary operating budget. We have no updates to provide you at this time. We're expecting them to receive notice on their BEP at any time. So I don't really have anything I can share with you other than I've been assured they'll present a balanced budget. We'll get a recommendation for a balanced budget from the school board. That's what I've been told repeatedly. 142 is a school fund, 143 is, and 146. So we'll go to page 19, which is debt service fund. It's on, again, on page 19 at the top of your screen, it shows in the packet. Something 55, I think. All right, here, line 40110, current property tax. So the piece for debt service is 48 cents, and it's still the same 327,500 is what the value of the penny is, and it's the same collection rate that we're estimating, same appeals, everything else.
And that was how many days?
48.
$1,000 increase just on the value of the penny.
So we're estimating $15,720,000. Everything else is very static. The transfers in at the very bottom of the page, the $825,000. One piece of that is the $688,000 that I told you about on the rebate. So that's $688,000. What's that other transfer? Is that?
Motorola.
Yeah, the Motorola that comes out of the sheriff's department as a transfer into the debt service fund, so we can make the lease payments on the Motorola system.
It's permanently going to
Yes, it's the big correction. This is where it's supposed to be. Yes.
Previously, we were making the sheriff's department jump through a bunch of hoops they need to jump through, and it needs to be handled this way.
But no use of fund balance.
There is no use.
$825,000.
There's no use of fund balance. The portion right in the middle of the page, the $600,000 on line 40210, which is local option sales tax. That is the county's portion of the increase in the local option sales tax. The other half of that increase went to education. This half came to the debt service fund. That was probably a critical factor in getting that passed. I don't expect any significant changes in this revenue mix. All that stuff, as you can see, is fairly static. Scott's pretty optimistic, thinks we're going to get an increase in investment income. I hope he's right. Even with whatever we may end up recommending to you or the commission, and whatever the commission approves, I wouldn't expect any changes on the revenue side. I would expect it to change the appropriation side, if anything. And that probably is not going to be ready for consideration until after the budget process. Right.
Our trustees' collections for prior years and our circuit court and clerk and master's collections for prior years, what 14, 15, we were 441.9. We're estimating 300. That's 140,000 less on collections, and same thing on the circuit clerk and the clerk and master's collections, about 40,000 less. What?
It's because they're doing a better job of collecting them at the current level before they get delinquent. So the higher your collection percentage, the less delinquent collections that you have available to you. So there's an inverse relationship there. And then we missed the estimate, frankly, on the discount on the property taxes. Last year, we underestimated that on the property tax increase, so that was our responsibility. But we've trued all that up and had Scott look at it and give us his best estimates there. I should say the trustee. All right, Fund 177, and that's page 20. And this is the fourth component of the property tax rate. This is the 4 cents for education capital needs. And it's estimated at $1,310,000. And the same assumptions on collection rate, same assumptions on the value of the penny. And then Fund 189, which is the capital project for, I'm sorry?
We need to update that to take off the word grant. I don't know why that's-
This is for the IT project.
It was just.
This is a
It was
reappropriation.
just hopeful thinking that there was going to be a grant.
It's a great for the kid.
Yeah.
That possibly could be trimmed a little bit depending on any expenses we incur and pay before you adopt a budget in the current year. Fund 191, just so you know, that's our endowment fund that the trustee holds, and that's just interest investments on that. And the rest of these funds are all they're non-budgetary funds, even though we do budget them. And you can look at those at your leisure, but it's what the trustee collects, for example, on sales tax that he remits to the 2 cities and the 3 school systems, our workers' comp fund, our health fund, and our general liability fund. And then I think one of them is tourism, I think. But you're welcome to look at those at your leisure.
What's the endowment fund?
The county was bequeathed a sum of money a few years ago for children's home, and we no longer have a children's home. So
we're just looking at it?
That money is just sitting there because we don't have a dedicated use to use it for. And I guess the county's going to have to determine, do we go back and give it to the court and say you need to figure out who the heirs are or what? I don't know.
How much is this?
Yeah.
All right, any other questions on revenue?
Can I ask a question about the self-insurance premiums, Randy?
Yes.
Are they going up because they've just been trending up as all other insurance has?
Well, the commission, you're on page 24.
Mm-hmm.
The premium structures that the commission adopted, we don't think need any adjustments. Now, the way we budget for things here, it's got 6 months at an old rate and 6 months at the new rate for our current year, fiscal 16. Next year, based on what we're seeing, the premium structure supports the benefit plan, so we don't see a need to change the premium structures. And you may see a change in nomenclature here, how we describe some of the stuff we may combine the expense account and the revenue account and rely on Chronos to give us the detailed reporting instead of doing the detailed reporting in the general ledger. We're not there yet. That's something that may come up in the not too distant future. And that ought to be good news for everybody, because that was a pretty painful discussion to have last year, and I consider it a very positive note that our premium structure doesn't need to be changed this year to support the revenues.
Just need
I
to
mean,
work
support
on
the
the health
benefit
plan.
plan.
We just need to work on that, just keep
Wellness
this trend going this way.
Wellness plan.
Drought Commissioner, wellness plan.
True, sir. Cost down.
Any other questions on any of those funds? Wait, let me see if I can cut light. Is that any better?
Yeah. Angela's aggregated everything that you were presented. And I'll touch on some of those things that we mentioned a little earlier, if I can see them. On your right-hand column are the notes, kind of some of the descriptions of the things that you were told during the hearings, and then some notes that we put out there to explain some changes in where we're budgeting for some items. As an illustration, if you look in the county commission budget, we have moved the commission secretary and the temporary employee to the county clerk's budget. So we've reduced the commission budget, increased the clerk's budget by the same amount of money. And if you look at the law, it's pretty clear that it's the county clerk's responsibility to support the commission. And deputy clerks need to be in the clerk's budget, not in the commission budget. So that's one change that we moved. If you'll come down to the fourth line, Budget and Finance Committee, line 51230, that is nothing more than the publication cost for the public hearing and the public printing of the budget that's required by statute. We put that in the finance department budget rather than having a separate department pay for that $400 transaction. So there's $400 in the finance department budget, and we eliminated it here. The little asterisk that you'll see on the county mayor / executive office, and the subsequent asterisks that you'll see below that reflect the change I mentioned to you in my opening comments, and that is reducing that's the change in the update in the salaries for the elected officials based on the 2010 census report. Just so you know, everything we look at in the census is whatever the census update is that we get from the Census Bureau. So we're looking at 127,000 population right now, and every piece of data that we look at, this is the only thing where we have to go back to the 2010 census, and I just failed to make Angela aware of that. So that's why the wrong number was put in those estimates. So those have all been corrected for all the office holders that have the asterisk by them. We have built into the orange column, or the peach column as Angela likes to call it, and you can't distinguish it there, but the requested 16-17 column. That includes the updates that I mentioned to you for the salaries again on the elected officials, the agreements that we have with Parks and Recreation, GIS, 911, and then the agreement we have for the state of Tennessee's Rehabilitation Service Office.
Excuse me.
Yes,
I need Mike, please.
Mike?
we've got another one on the blank.
If that's what it wants to do today.
Joel, I promise you, we're not orchestrating this to support our technology.
But I'm so glad you see it.
Is it out of focus or is it,
It's out of focus.
It's a little out of focus, I think.
I think I could read it right there.
It's not on there.
It's on the menu.
Well, there is a focus
Couldn't hurt it.
button. Right.
You just hold the table? Mayor, can I borrow your seat for a second?
Sure.
I'm gonna focus this projector.
The audience can't see the,
Oh, it's.
I have that kind of.
Don't let me fall, okay?
Jared, are you getting old or something? That's hurting you
I
that
was
bad?
dying.
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
My clothes?
that's better. That's
You
better.
scroll and it just goes
Better?
over.
Is it better for you?
I had it,
I can see a lot
and
better.
then I was scrolling down to the phone, it came over there to the phone.
Thank you.
I don't know who it is.
We're all gonna get lost.
I'm not going to slow down.
It just went straight. Just like his went up. Mine
Okay.
just went up. So it seems to happen when you click in this column here. I'm sorry. Randy.
Oh, it's fine.
You start moving, sometimes it does what it wants to do.
I'll make sure that she can see.
I'm good, I got papers.
It's where you want it, right? What page are you on, Ann, please, so I make sure.
32. It's 2 pages. 101 is 2 pages. 31 and 32. I just went in here because this is where you see the agreements with other governments.
Somebody voted yes,
So the peach column, or the column that's headed up, requested 1617, has built into it those GIS increases, the 911 increase, and Parks and Rec increase that we committed to by county commission adopting an interlocal agreement with those sister cities of Alcoa and Maryland. The other one that's been increased is Tennessee Rehabilitation Services, and that was, what, less than $1,500, I think. So those are included in the $49,424,632 request. Everything else that was presented to you at those 2 hearings that we held all day long are in the next to the last column called additional requests. And those would be those things, if you want to consider recommending those as part of your recommendation on May the 9th, then we would need to include those in whatever recommendation that you want to send forward to the full commission. Questions, comments? But this is basically the summary. So you've got on page 32 on your screen, that's the general county. And then on page 33 are the additional funds that we went over the revenues a few moments ago. And you can see those additional requests. And I believe the only one that we need to have a little bit further discussion on is on Fund 131 in the middle of the page. I mentioned to you that we need to increase those local revenues. Angela, do you have the support document for this on the screen, or do I need to just talk from this?
I gave handouts to them.
All right. And we can put this online, but the handout in front of you that is headed up revenue estimates for Fund 131.
I did have that first sheet.
That's the same thing you saw
That's this.
on the screen. Then you see a colored sheet that has across the top 2010, 11, 2011, 12, 2011, 12, 13, 13, 14, 14, 15, 15, 16. That's what I'd like for you to draw your attention to right now. If you look at the shaded green column, which is FY 2015-16, well, first, let's look at the total local revenue. And I can't tell what color that is, but
Here, I get it.
has everybody got the top? Top. Everybody got this page in front of them? And I'll have this online tomorrow. Angela will. On the total local revenue, the orange line that goes horizontal across the page starts with 2,645,000 bolded, 3,421,000 bolded, 3,381,000 bolded. That's the total local revenue for each of those years that we have received. So when we do the maintenance of effort calculation, we will drop the left-hand column off, the 10, 11, and replace it with the green column, 15, 16. And as you can see, right now, the 5-year average is under the total column in that orange looking color. It's $3,207,299. Does everybody see that? If you hadn't heard what I just told you a few moments ago, that's the maintenance of effort number that we would need to adhere to.
3,207,000.
Yes. But but the real number, because of the adjustment we have to make to drop off 2011 and add actual 2016, that's going to bump that number, maintenance of effort number, up to 3,333,000. Is that correct, Angela? So that's our average over 5 years that we have to appropriate at least that much money in 2017. So if you look at the far right-hand column, FY 16-17, you'll see highlighted in yellow $2,702,000 in sales tax collections we think we need to budget, as well as those other revenues, and that projects to be $3,348,900 of local revenue. And that would meet the blue box. We will have satisfied the statutory requirement to meet or exceed the average of the 5-year local revenue effort. Now, if you wanted to ask, what are the local revenues that we're measuring, that's the next set of numbers immediately below that. Local revenues are the cable franchise, other permits, investment income, Other local revenues, sale of materials and supplies, sale of recycling materials, miscellaneous refunds, sale of equipment, or if we recovered any damages. Those are the types of revenues that are considered local revenues by the state.
Why's the cable franchise fee not showing up in 14-15?
With the capital, if I'm not mistaken. did we
Yes,
take
it was all
capital?
in capital.
Then we started putting the cost back separate.
Right.
We were taking it all
Yeah.
back to general county, somebody worked up, made a motion, to go all back.
Which helped us from building our,
It hurt us. If you want to look at it as general county, but if you want to look at it and try to get bridges fixed and paving.
that was the year they proposed a capital project fund for the highway department, and we seeded it with that cable franchise fund. And just as a reminder, the cable franchise fee is both in the general county and in the highway fund.
So it's about $740,000 total.
Yes. Questions or comments on that? So you should expect to see something like this in your consideration for what you forward to the full commission after I've met with Mr. Head. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks and updates.
Does anyone have any questions or any comments that they'd like to address to Randy or Angela? And I do think that it warrants us each having another meeting with Randy and Angela and to if we do have any other questions before we make a decision. I do want to be prepared as the budget committee to make this presentation May the 6th, May the 9th at that budget committee meeting.
And if we get any additional updates on the expense side or the revenue side, we'll update this. So there is potential that you would see some changes. I don't know how material they would be.
Your motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Thank you. Lee, thank you.
We'll
Mike.
actually vote on the projected budget on that.
I want to have our recommendation ready to send the full commission May the 9th.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Angela. She's responsible for all this.
Thank you. Thank you.